Hello, Covenant family. I wanted to spend a little time with you today talking about communion and a practice called the Love Feast or Agape Feast that I thought you all would be interested in hearing about. I'm doing this because it's so beautiful. I know people miss each other so much that they want to come back together. They miss the Holy Sacrament of Communion, and we're getting ready for our first Sunday, so people are saying, isn't it time to do that? And I'm so thankful for how meaningful that is and what a means of grace it is for all of us. And you may have heard some churches are doing that, including some United Methodist churches. This is a challenging question, and honestly, there's a lot of space where you can make a theological argument, I think, on either side of it. I want to share with you that I come down in a place where I'm going to prefer not to practice communion in the way that we're worshiping right now for several reasons, but the biggest for me is that communion to me is something that we do when we're together. It's something that happens in the gathered community, gathering in Christ's holy name. And to me, physical presence means a lot. In fact, I think we're all feeling that right now, how much it really does mean. And so I'm just excited for us to get back together and do communion in full when we're all together, and it's got the full meaningfulness of it. That doesn't mean that those that are practicing another way don't receive the full meaning from it, but that's part of how I understand it. And because I see this COVID virus as a temporary problem in terms of the way it's affecting us and this time of distance between us as temporary, I believe it's acceptable for us to not be able to have communion in this time and to really feel it as somewhat of a fast, of something that we long for, just like we long to be together. But I know that the church cares so deeply for one another, and we think of each other as family. We want to commemorate that. And so one thing that goes all the way back to the church in Acts in some regard in terms of how they had meals together, also to early Methodists and people that the Wesleys knew, the Moravians, that really were a part of, in some ways, what led to Methodism starting. And Orthodox churches have celebrated these things called love feasts or agape feasts. And the idea is recognizing this is not communion, and we're not doing this as if it were communion, but instead this is a holy and special meal. We think of the book of Acts, and we think of the Christians coming together because they love one another, and they want to celebrate each other and who God is and what Christ has done. And so I'm hoping that some of you will want to participate in a love feast this weekend, Palm Sunday, which would have been our first Sunday of the month. And so for that reason, I just want to give you some instructions. I don't want anybody to feel like they have to go make a special trip or do grocery shopping to be prepared for a love feast or agape feast. So instead, just use something that you have. And I don't think we have to be legalistic about the items used. There's been some places and times where they used sweet buns and coffee. Other places where it's more was like bread and water. But anything that is somewhere similar to that in some regard that you already have is totally sufficient. We don't need to get into the worry about the exact elements. And instead, we will prepare, if you want to come together on Sunday or whenever you watch the Sunday morning video, and think about each other's presence, think about how much we miss each other and love each other and care for one another. Try to be intentional to remember the family that God has given us in this church and the Christian faith. So if you have questions or concerns, I'm sorry, I know for some it might be disappointing that we're not going to truly commemorate communion together and experience communion this weekend or in the coming weeks, but I would be happy to talk to you more about it or send you my thoughts or thoughts of other scholars. Again, people are coming down on multiple sides on this, and I'm going to err on the side of I'm not doing something that I'm not fully comfortable with as a kind of a new tradition. So anyway, I'm thankful for each of you. I'm thankful for the way we love each other, and we'll look forward to Love Feast on Sunday.